YouTube? This is Steve from Average Joe's Fantasy Football, and we've got another great Dynasty video for you guys. This is going to be my rankings for the top 10 rookie wide receivers going into the NFL draft, and that's going to help you into this upcoming season. Now, again, this is going to be probably geared more towards the PPR, which I think most of you guys are probably playing in. If it is standard, it might change a little bit, but these are my rankings for PPR rookie dynasties. I'm only going to do 10. This is actually a very, very good and deep, rich class for wide receivers. So there's going to be a lot of value you're going to find in the second and third rounds into this season. That's going to help you build that very, very strong depth, and of course, maybe some sleepers here that can help you in your upcoming season and going forward. So my rankings here are going to be based off of my film, watching different highlights, watching some of these players, going off of player profiler, which I'll have in the link down below, some of their stats, combine, just different things that I wanted to kind of look at and what I'm looking for in a good receiver that's going to add some really strong value. Now, these rankings can change. This is all before their landing spots. Landing spots will obviously be a huge factor. And what I mean by that is, would you rather take a Treylon Burks who went to, say, the Jets with Zach Wilson, or would you rather take a, Chris Olave who went to Green Bay, right? The quarterback play is going to play a big factor in this, but this is where I believe just talent-wise and what they did in college is going to be where my rankings are. Now, the first guy I have is going to be Garrett Wilson. I know a lot of people like Treylon Burks, and he's up there, don't get me wrong, but I like Garrett Wilson. I love how his routes are just smooth. He just looks like he's running in slow motion, but not in a bad way. It's mesmerizing watching his routes. He does a great job. He's got a 4.38 40, which was ridiculous. He can outrun. He can separate himself from his defender, which helps give a great passing lane for his quarterback, which is just awesome. He has really good hand strength and concentration. There were a lot of great plays where he either held the ball in the middle going across the field, or there was a lot of great sideline plays. He's very aware of where he is on the field, whether it be the sticks, whether it be getting the sideline pass. He is very aware. He's got some great body control. He's able to really hone in on keeping his hands, his feet where they need to be, and of course, be able to absorb the hit. Good size for him. Look, one of the things I noticed watching this past season, for example, his quarterback Stroud was very inaccurate. There were a lot of balls that were thrown either behind Wilson, maybe beyond him. I mean, there were a lot of plays that Garrett Wilson really had to stretch and make the play. That is why I think what's helped separate him from my next two that I'm going to mention in here. And again, he outperformed, Olave. Those receivers for Ohio State were ridiculous. He was the better receiver against really any of his counterparts and peers. And I just think looking at how he played his style, it's just the smoothest thing. It's hard to describe. He's not going to be, okay, let me be very clear. He is not going to be a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, just because those guys are outliers and those guys have, really set the bar. But I do think he's going to be one of those guys that you won't feel that like I wasted a first round pick on this talent, because he's got that type of talent. All right. Next, this is where I'm probably going to get some crazy comments down below, but I have Jameson Williams as my second wide receiver. Yes, obviously he's dealing with an injury. He's probably not even going to be ready really for the first month or so into the regular season. But I like his talent. I think he's just a bit, like I would say 2A to Treylon Burks 2B, because I have him as my third receiver. What I felt from what I watched in his films, he has great speed, ran a 4.3 40, which, again, it's not official due to his ACL, but just previous, I would say testing on his speed. He ran a 4.3 40. And, before the championship, obviously he had a great season going into that. He had also is a really good special teams player. He had 2 touchdowns as well into the special teams, which if you think about it, think about receivers like CeeDee Lamb can play punt return, right? That's, you think about some of these receivers that can do a little bit of both. Antonio Brown, used him as a punt returner. Those type of things are some dynamic plays that are going to help add value to his roster spot. And I know dealing with the injury is going to scare a lot of scouts. I think it's going to be a steal in the NFL in general. I think he's going to help add some real value, which I think you can get Jameson Williams as a pretty good price into this fantasy draft coming up, just because of no one knows what's going to happen with him. But he has great speed. He runs really well smooth routes. He can really, again, separate himself from the defender. He had 15 touchdowns this past season, which is phenomenal. He can outrun most of his opponents. And one of the things I feel that is going to help, I guess, separate him from Treylon Burks is I felt his consistency as far as route running was there. His speed is a little bit more of a, I guess, separator that I feel is going to help add value. We just didn't get to see, obviously, the full potential as far as, the championship game, but because it's always about the big plays and who you're gonna play against. I think it adds, because obviously Treylon Burks played against some really great conferences, and I think that helps add his value. But I'll go a little bit into Treylon Burks in a second. But I love just Jameson Williams' route running. I love his special teams capability. His burst score was ridiculous. College, Dominator was obviously up there. He is just one of those receivers that I feel going into this. I kind of see him as it's hard to give me a good comp with him because he's got some good mixture in there. What I like about him, realistic, and where I've kind of felt some of that difference was he ran routes really well, like an Amari Cooper in that style. He's faster than Amari Cooper, but he runs routes really well. He's very dynamic when it comes to the special teams, more like an Antonio Brown type of ability where he can score on a punt return. He can do an end around. He can obviously outrun you in the skinny post, maybe an out route. There were a lot of things that I just felt his ability just kind of stretched him just a bit above Treylon Burks. Now, Treylon Burks I do have as my third wide receiver, and you could put him into the second spot. I still think Garrett Wilson is just a bit above him as well. Look, he's got a solid body. His body is built for this type of environment. He knows how to use it. He's one of those 50-50 jump ball players who you throw it up, he's going to get the ball, and he's going to end up making a big play. Great red zone threat. He's got great speed. One thing that I felt was his speed was a lot better in game film than I feel like it really reflected in any of the scouting reports. I felt once he catches a ball, he can outrun most defenses, and it didn't feel like, not like a slow start, but he just had the ability where he just ran, and it didn't seem like it was very fast, but most defenders couldn't catch him. He had a great catch rate of 71%, which is amazing. You throw it to him, he was going to catch the ball, which is a big deal because obviously some of these quarterbacks, whether we jump balls or not, he was going to be the one getting down on there, which was amazing. He averaged 16 yards at reception, which is ridiculous. And again, in the conference that he played in, that's ridiculous in itself. And I think that's going to help elevate him. He's one of those guys that I think he's more refined going into than compared to Williams. I think Burks is a little more, refined, and I think he's going to be a day one starter, minus obviously the injury to Williams. But he's one of those guys that, again, landing spot I think is going to hurt him the most when it comes to this fantasy draft. Just because, again, if Treylon Burks goes to a Carolina or a Houston or a Jets or, someone a Falcon, the Falcons, that is going to affect him big time just because of the quarterback play. I don't think he makes the quarterback better. I think he does need a good quarterback to help him, really elevate his game. That's my only concern with him going to this. It's just really going to be his positioning in the draft. Now, number 4, I've got Drake London. He's got a very Mike Evans-like skill set. I'm not saying he's Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is definitely his unique style, but he's got a very Mike Evans skill set. He is definitely a 50-50 guy. He's a 6'4" guy who is just ridiculous. Jump ball. I mean, you watch a lot of his highlights, red zone, jump balls. I mean, this kid was just amazing. He does lack some separation, which is why he wasn't in a lot of the jump ball situations. A lot of the film I watched him wasn't the smoothest route runner. He wasn't able to really evade the defenders very well. A lot of times, almost every pass towards him, the defender was on his hip, which made it very challenging. He did make most of those catches, which is, again, a defeat of itself, which I think was amazing. Again, his hand skill was awesome, and the biggest thing with him, he didn't run in the combine. You don't know what his real speed looks like. It didn't look very fast on game film. To me, he looked like a 4.56. 4 somewhere around there as far as speed, which isn't horrible. He had a great catch rate, again, 71%, which is again amazing. He's one of those guys who's going to win the catch, as far as where he is. The biggest thing that I have as far as concern is the injury bug. Since he's been in college, he really hasn't played a full season. That is a concern of mine, and I think something you got to really look into, because that's a lot of times, man. It's like little things like that, some tissue injuries. bruises, things like that can linger, and it can really kind of affect you your whole career. A la Christian McCaffrey right now dealing with a lot of those soft tissue injuries. Will Fuller, some of the players I can think of right now that really do get affected by that, and it can be a long-term thing. Now, number 5, I got Jahan Dotson. Obviously, Dotson, he's one of those players. Again, these guys, you could really have a really good, some good luck with these guys, but had a very high target share in college, but his catch rate was a little bit of a concern. He got a lot of targets his way, but his catch rate was 60% for most of his time in college, which is very concerning, which means he had the ball thrown at him. Either it was inaccurate or he had some drops, right? Those are the two things that are going to be played as factors. And for me, he did play some special teams, which again, special teams is always going to help alleviate, roster spots. You're like, hey, if I could play special teams, that's going to help obviously keep me on there. And he is going to be a high, I would say a day 2 pick. I don't think he's going to go into the first round, but who knows? You never know these days. But he continuously increased each year in his receptions and yards. He finished with double-digit touchdowns his senior year, which was obviously a great year. That's what really helped him stand out. He had a good 40 at a 4.43, which, was great. He didn't allow in the burst score, though. That was something that was a concern. His agility and burst score wasn't very high, but he did have a great college dominator at 90th percentile. He dominated plays left and right. He was one of those guys that if he was getting the ball his way, he was coming down with the ball. Again, I like him a lot. I think him and the next guy I have is going to be really close, but I like Jahan Dotson a lot. I do think my only concern was some of his drops in his route running could have been a little bit smoother. Now I have Chris Olave as my number 6. Runs very smooth in and out of his breaks. One of those, I think one of the comps I think they had him was Stephon Diggs. I wouldn't quite go there, but he's very smooth route runner. Again, in and out, has the speed to create separation, which is going to help obviously in the future for him. He's always one of those guys who's going to help get the big play going. I think he's more of a wide receiver 2 than he is a wide receiver 1 going to the NFL. He ran a 4.39 40, which is awesome. He has great awareness. He's always going to be able to make the first down. Think Hunter Renfro as far as that ability that, hey, I know where I need to be every single time to either catch the sideline pass or going to be beyond the first round. He's got that type of mentality. He's got that maturity. He played obviously 4 seasons. A lot of people thought he might have come out last year, but I think there's a reason he stayed one more year. I legit think he had to stay for one more year, right? And that was one of those things. But again, I value more of a wide receiver too, and I think just his size concerns me a little bit. He did have double touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns 2 out of his 4 years, which obviously is a big deal. I think in the right situation, I think him going to Green Bay, I think is going to be the spot I feel he's going to fall in, and I think he is actually going to be a phenomenal receiver. I don't think he ends up being the wide receiver 1. He might have to be just based off of the lack of talent for Green Bay, but Green Bay is one of those spots that I think he's going to end up falling, and I like him in that spot. I think him and Aaron Rodgers are going to look phenomenal this season. Now, number 7, I got David Bell. I like David Bell a lot. He's an interesting prospect. People forget he outshined Rondale Moore at Purdue. He dominated his college freshman year. He exploded with 86 receptions, which was awesome, over 1,000 yards. 2020 was a struggle overall for the team in general. And it reflected a lot in his play as well. But then 2021 came back around, and he was back to where he was, dominating. He had 93 receptions, over 1,200 yards. My only concern with him is his combining results. One of the things that I was concerned with is he finished with a 4.65 40, which really made me nervous, okay? He didn't have great agility, didn't have great burst. His 3-cone drill was subpar. So the fact that he was very dominating in college, that was one of his things that he did a really good job. It's tough to say. I would say Anquan Bolden, kind of like what they have here. I do like that comparison where he wasn't going to outrun you every play, but he would outmuscle you. He's going to run some good routes. He'll catch a lot of balls. Just be a very good wide receiver. Like, think Keenan Allen, right? A lot of people never talk about Keenan Allen, right? He's top 10 fantasy every single year. He's one of the best receivers in this league, but not once does he ever get mentioned. And I think David Bell is going to be that guy into this year and in the future. He's that type of receiver where he may not be that explosive, that big game, big mouth, like, oh, I'm here to stay, that type of thing. He's going to just get you, 70 to 80 catches a year, 1,000 yards, 8 to 10 touchdowns and go about his business. And that's where I believe he really is. And I almost put him up a little bit higher just because I love that personality, because I'm a big Keenan Allen fan. I'm an Anquan Boldin fan. Like, those are the type of receivers I really absolutely love, that just, they come to work, they just ready to show up and just ball out. And that's what I feel, that's the vibe I get from David Bell, just watching his highlights. It's just, again, he's overlooked. He's one of my sleepers going into the season. I'm definitely looking at him in a lot of my drafts coming up. So I like him a lot. Now, another guy I have at number 8 is going to be Sky Moore. Look, had 37% target share his senior year, which is phenomenal. He is a little bit on the smaller side, so that obviously concerns me a little bit. I think he's going to be a great slot receiver. A lot of comps have him as like a Golden Tate, Russell Gage. Those are kind of some of the comps I see him as. He does have good awareness. He is definitely a slot receiver aspect. He knows exactly where the first down is. He knows his role very well. He loves the middle of the field. Again, the concern of his 5'10" definitely should be there. He also didn't wow on the burst score, which is obviously concerning, being the fact that he's probably going to end up playing the slot in most leagues, most teams that he's going to go to. So that does bother me. He did run a 4.41 in the 40, which is obviously really good speed. Again, one of those guys that I feel, to add value, he's going to go to a team that I feel has a good wide receiver, 1 or 2, and he's going to come out in, that Barrios role, Beasley role, that type of role where he's going to come in, he's going to get you 40 to 50 catches, 5 to 6 touchdowns, 700-800 yards maybe, and just have a good first start. And I think he can grow into a wide receiver 2 and kind of move him around a bit, but I do like Sky Moore a lot. Number 9, I've got Christian Watson. He can play special teams, which is a big deal, and I think that adds some great value to not only fantasy but also in real life. He had 2 touchdowns in 2020 and the special teams aspect when it comes to the punt returns. He did run a 4.36 40, which is awesome, especially at his size at 6'4", which is ridiculous. That's one of those things that it's harder and harder to find that size, but he ran a 4.36, which is crazy. Now, one thing I do have a little bit of concern, he's going to be a little bit older going into this season. I think when the season starts, he'll be 23. So again, thinking Dynasty, that does concern me a little bit. He did play some running back in college as well, which I thought was awesome. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that it could be a steal. Don't quote me on it like this, but I think he's going to be more the gadget guy, right? Deebo Samuel, Cordell Patterson, right? He's going to be that guy where he is a wide receiver, but he can play running back. He can make some gadget plays. He can do. I always felt he's a lot taller than like a Tavon Austin, but felt like that, right? He felt like a Tavon Austin scat back sort of player that he's going to make some plays. He's going to be all over the field. He'll be in the backfield one play. He's going to be on the outside, going to be on the inside. He'll be playing quarterback somehow, just because I feel like that's the type of player he's going to be. Now, last guy I have is my wide receiver number 10. It's going to be Jalen Tober. Tolbert didn't play at a top competitive school, so you're probably not going to see a lot about him, a lot of film. But he did show great ball skill, which I thought was really important. And one of the things I watched is he ran a 4.49. Not top tier, not bottom tier, just kind of average there when it comes to that. He had average burst and agility, which kind of affects him a little bit, which again, that's my only concern, but he did have a very high college dominator at 96th percentile. He can separate himself from the ball as a defender and to get up the ball. I think that was one thing that he did a really good job at, and he tracks so well. A lot of his deep passes, he just knew how to position himself. He ran the route where he never put himself in a situation where he put himself where the sideline was also defending him. He knew how to run his defender to the inside and then squeeze himself back into the sideline to catch the ball. Or if it was a skinny post, he knew how to keep his defender down the middle, never overplaying one side of the field, and then the last possible second go skinny and drop right into the middle. And he was doing that left and right. He had a lot of deep balls. He just ran routes really well to keep himself separated from the defender. He knew how to keep the defender at his hip if needed, and then when to cut in and out. He just had a really good, smooth routes. I mean, he just ran them all without any problems. Again, he just didn't have a lot of burst, which was a little bit of concern for me. He's definitely going to be one of those guys that you might want to go after and to mid to late second round, maybe the third round early in case he falls there. But I do like his talent. I like what he was able to do. Again, he got high target shares. He was a great college receiver. He just didn't have a lot of talent around him or play against a lot of top tier talent to really show him up. But I do think he's one of those players that's just going to pop in there and you're like, wow, I wish I had drafted him because he came out of nowhere, right? So those are my top 10 wide receiver rankings. There's a lot of other great receivers you can mention in here. Right, Alec Pierce, George Pickens. There's a lot of good ones, and don't get me wrong, these aren't the only ones, but these are the guys I believe are going to be the top 10 going into this fantasy season, and I do think a lot of them will just help solidify your roster. Now, this will change obviously when the draft hits, and we'll do some updates out as well when that happens. Obviously, we're a little over a week away, which is super exciting, but I want to make sure you guys have this. Be prepared in case some of you guys are already doing drafts and drafting your rookies early before position, so I want to make sure this is out there. If you guys haven't yet, make sure you check out my running back top 10 rookie rankings as well for Dynasty. Help give you some insight on who you should be looking at as far as those players go. And I'll be doing a video for quarterback and tight ends because there's not as many to talk about, so I'll kind of mix that video together just to make sure you guys are prepared for that as well. All right. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that notification bell is on. That way you guys are notified every time you see a video just like this. Make sure you hit the like button, and I'll check you guys out next time.